Hello. There's a quality in mindfulness that people find quite challenging. It's a quality we cultivate, and it's called equanimity. And this is a little talk to unpack what we mean by equanimity in mindfulness, what are its qualities, and what does it look like to meet a moment with equanimity interpersonally and in terms of your relationship with the wider world. And we'll talk a little bit about how to cultivate equanimity. So it's been quite interesting preparing this talk, and I was finding some resistance to certain aspects of equanimity, and we'll come to that. You may have similar challenges. So the Oxford Dictionary for equanimity is simply mental composure, even in challenging conditions, or especially in difficult situations. And in mindfulness, it means something similar, but it's a much deeper, broader definition. And how we talk about equanimity generally is in terms of the different qualities that are present when you meet a moment with equanimity. So I'll just touch on some of those qualities, and then I'll illustrate what is meant by those qualities with actual examples. So one of the key ones is non-discrimination. Another is interconnectedness, inclusivity, being fully present, uh, deep understanding, deep seeing, acceptance, and there's many other qualities that you can draw in from the world of mindfulness that have a role in what it means to meet a moment with equanimity, but they'd be the key ones. So I'm going to go straight to an illustration because I think it brings it to life a lot more. So, and I'm going to start with something interpersonal. So say you're in a workplace and an office, and you're working in your office and you're diligently cracking on with the work you've got to do. And somebody walks in and you're sort of completely calm, and they walk in and there's this sort of wall of angry energy that comes in with them. There's so much anger. And it may not be directed at you, but they're just really angry. And for many of us in that situation, our immediate reaction might be, oh, whatever I need to say to get this person to leave the room. I will say whatever that needs to be said so that they will leave. Or we might immediately, without even thinking that we're doing it, we might immediately judge and categorize and compare the person. Oh, this is a type of person. Thank goodness I'm not like that. My friends are not like that. My colleagues are not like that. This is a special type of person. This is why they're angry. They're over there and I'm over here. And so we may do a bit of othering and discriminating, and it may happen in an instant without us even realizing we're doing it. Another reaction might be to be triggered. So perhaps in our youth, there was somebody who was quite angry that kept coming into our home or into our personal world or in our close circle. And there was something we could do about it as a child. We couldn't escape the situation. And so now as adults, when we see anger, it brings us back to that childhood feeling of not being able to escape, or whatever other negative associations we might have with anger. And so we might be triggered by that person's anger, and we might overreact as a result. We might actually project our childhood pain into the situation and make the situation a lot worse. And so there's lots of different ways in which we can react unskillfully when we're confronted with that kind of situation. So what does it mean to meet that moment with equanimity? Okay, so someone who has developed that capacity from a mindfulness point of view, firstly, has looked very deeply into life, into their own inner life, and into what it means to be a human being, and what it means to be deeply, well, at a deep level, what it means to be alive. And what they come to really understand and sense is a connectedness to all of life, all of life's living creatures, not just human beings. They start to appreciate their profound connectedness. And so when you have that insight, it becomes difficult to discriminate. So you don't find yourself othering another person. You understand that actually I have the seeds of anger in me. Everyone has the seeds of anger. And to some varying degree, we water that seed. We water that with the conditions of life that have come to us, and the conditions of life we continue to just sort of germinate and cultivate. We might do a lot of experiences, or mix with certain, have certain experiences which we keep in subscribing to, which continually water the seeds of anger. And so this sense of interconnectedness, the person who's meeting the moment with equanimity from a mindfulness point of view does not discriminate, does not categorize, does not box, does not other that person who walks into the room, does not think this is something that needs to disappear in a hurry. What they see, they can deeply see that the conditions of life that have led to this moment. It's different from judging, because they're not really it's not like judging, labeling a person, oh, you're this or you're that. No, they can sense the conditions of life that have led to this moment where this person has presented with so much anger. They can sense it, and they understand it, and they can really see it. And so what's not getting in the way is their own baggage. Okay, so they may even be triggered a little bit. They may have done some inner work and realized that there's this problem with anger from their childhood, and they've done some work on that, right? So they've been able to understand it really deeply. So they may get a little bit triggered, but straight away they'll know. Straight away they'll sense, or maybe a few seconds in, they'll sense, my inner child is reacting, is here. My childhood trauma, my inner childhood challenge with anger is being triggered, and they'll notice it. And they might do a few deep breaths, and they'll know, because of the way they've processed it in their practice, they'll know what to do for that particular set of circumstances that they experienced as children. They'll know what to do. They'll know how to breathe and how to sit with that feeling, so that it doesn't invade the space between themselves and this person, and the inner child can calm down and not be threatened. So they're really present, completely present. And they can see the conditions of life that have led to this person's state, and they feel connected to this person's state. What the level they're really connecting at is the level of love. So there's the surface of all of the noise and the anger and the conditions, but underneath is love. Underneath is a person who is a loving person underneath. And so that's the sort of level they're connecting with. And they're being fully present, and they're not judging and comparing. And it might be they say nothing. They might just sit and they listen, because the person who meets the moment with equanimity is not trying to fix, it's not trying to be the rescuer. They just be a loving witness. And their presence, without judging and just witnessing and really listening and being really present for that person and not judging, might actually be enough for that person to start calming down, or calming down enough for the the person listening to maybe make a skillful suggestion, depending on the circumstances. It might be skillful to say something like, I hear you're really in a lot of pain about this, or I hear you're really upset. Do you feel like taking a little walk? Maybe you might feel a little better. Something appropriate to the circumstances. But it might be even more skillful to say nothing. But the minimum is really listening, being really present and not judging. But the moment will speak to the person as to what to say, if anything. But the person who meets a moment with equanimity accepts that there's acceptance that this person's journey is their journey, and we can be loving witnesses to their journey, which is the best gift we can bring. We can really listen with an open heart. But at the end of the day, we also accept that this is their journey. We're not trying to fix them. We're accepting the world as it is. So that I hope gives you a bit of an insight at the interpersonal level. As for meeting the world as it is, when we think about and reflect or listen to the news, or we might find ourselves a bit in despair about the world as it is. And all of these different qualities that I've talked about, non-discrimination, interconnectedness, deep seeing, deep understanding, they're really important qualities for connecting with the world as it is, being able to understand the conditions that have led to the different crises that are occurring. It gives us a deeper understanding of the different parties in a conflict. We don't rush to judgment, we don't compare, we don't categorize, we don't other people. All of these qualities it's the same set of qualities for meeting the world as it is. It's a really interesting exercise to reflect on these qualities in your practice, maybe one at a time. Non-discrimination, interconnectedness, deep understanding of the conditions of people's lives, acceptance, and to see how they feel in you when you practice. Is there any resistance? And that can be a really interesting and insightful way to cultivate equanimity, by first understanding which bits of it you have resistance with. So for me, I will just speak a little about this because it might be instructive, helpful in some way for you if you have a similar resistance. The big one for me was accepting the world as it is, not on an interpersonal level, but more generally. And I just looked within, and this was the big piece that I resisted. And I did some inquiry and discovered it was my inner child. And my inner child is a bit of an activist, or at least this was the sense I was feeling. And my inner child said, no, I am not accepting the world as it is. It's not happening. And so what I did was I decided to be the adult in the room and to take my inner child on a journey. And I turned my attention to her with kindness and love. And we are like two birds together. We went on a flight around the world, and I took her around the world and I showed her the world as it is, kind of sense of it. And what she saw everywhere was so much love and kindness. And I took her to some of the world's worst places where there's severe humanitarian need, or the middle of a war zone and a conflict. And even there, she could see the love and the kindness. The way the ambulance driver would turn up to a scene that badly needed his or her help, knowing that there was a good chance that the explosion in a war zone, that the explosion could come again. What we call a double tap. If you're following the war in Ukraine, the Russians it hit an apartment building, and then the paramedics will come, knowing that there's a good chance that the Russians will hit the same place again. 10 minutes later, killing or injuring all the paramedics. But they still come. The ambulance drivers still come. And in Kathmandu, after the major earthquake, the community would come together and help people who'd lost their home and that had been reduced to rubble, and help that person rebuild their home. The whole community would all pitch in, or a good-sized group. Local people would all pitch in. There wasn't anything to sort of say or do. They just did it. And you can see this all over the world where there is extreme suffering. And people will come from different parts of the world without having any connection with that society, and they'll bring food and water and medicine. And so my inner child could see that, yes, there's suffering in the world, and there is so much love. And when she witnessed that, when she accepted that, when she could see that, and she could see it deeply, her heart eased. She could relax. She could see. She could accept. In this moment of presence, in this moment of contemplation of all the love and suffering in the world, she could accept the world as it is. At the same time, she was still an activist. She was still understanding that sense of there's still things to do. But she saw the power of equanimity for making that activism more helpful, because she could see that there's less intensity in one's engagement if they practice equanimity. There's less this fixation on having to fix things and this sort of mental attention that can narrow, and you can start discriminating. Equanimity encourages you to understand the conditions that brought all of the parties to a situation to where they are. You can see more deeply. And she could see the power of equanimity in engaging in the world. She could see it was really actually a much more beneficial contribution. Thich Nhat Hanh was a Vietnamese monk, and he saw so much devastation and suffering in the Vietnamese War. And I just finished with a quote from him. He said that other people are not our enemies. Other people are not our enemies. That a human is never our enemy. Our only enemies are delusion, hatred, and ignorance. Sending my love.